see everybody here. I appreciate Mark filling in the last couple of weeks.
You did good.
Did good. Replaced me. Good. One day I'll be here when he's here. See how he's doing. Or to see how good he is, because everybody keeps saying how great. Well, I appreciate him filling in and doing that. One of the first things I want to do is I want to turn to Mark chapter 14. Start in verse 1. And then we're going to look at a few things. Now the Passover and the Feast of the Unleavened Bread were only 2 days away. The chief priests and teachers of the law were working for some sly way to arrest Jesus and kill him. But not during the feast, they said, or the people might riot. And when he was in Bethany, reclined at the table in a home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came with alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why, this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She's done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you'll have with you always, and you can help them any time you want, but you'll not always have me." And she did what she could do. She poured the perfume on my body and beforehand to prepare for my burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. The Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to the end. And they were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Skipping to verse 27. You will all fall away, Jesus told them, for it is written, I'll strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I've risen, I'll go ahead of you to Galilee. Peter declared, even if all of you fall away, I will not. I tell you the truth, Jesus answered, today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Jesus insisted emphatically, even if I have to die with you, I'll never disown you. And all the others said the same thing. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to the disciples, sit here while I pray. And he took Peter, James, and John along with him and began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, he said to them. Stay here and keep watch. Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if it was possible, the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. And he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for just an hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. And once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. They didn't know what to say to him. And returned the 3rd time, he said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? That's enough. The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is betrayed in the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. And just as he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared, and with him a crowd armed with swords, clubs, and sent from the high priest, the chief priest, the teachers of the law, and the elders. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with him, the one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard. And going at once to Jesus, Judas said, Rabbi, and kissed him. The men seized Jesus and arrested him, and then one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Am I leading a rebellion, he said, Jesus said, that you come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled. Then everyone deserted him and fled. Lord, we thank you for the day. We thank you for our blessings. We thank you for the opportunity to study your word. Guide us in all truth and help us to apply it. In your Son's name. All right. Get to try out the new machine. Well, he told me while I was gone, he sent me an email saying it does not have snow on it or rain. First thing I want us to take a look at is a couple things real quick. Last 2 weeks that Mark has filled in, talking about from the Gospel of Mark. Basically, up until then, we have been in Galilee. 2 weeks ago, we started and came into Jerusalem. As the gospel writer Mark writes, he basically has those two emphasis points and doesn't spend a lot of time dealing with some of the things that some of the others do. He spends all that time talking about the work or whatever in Galilee, which was the primary thing they did, and the areas surrounding, as we looked at, as he tries to convince the Christians in Rome to remain strong and that Jesus, his word, staying and sticking to it because he is the one with all the power. Yeah, I have no idea. Boyd, is it my fault? Every time I get it, it messes up?
I didn't have that problem, so.
My point exactly. All right, hold on. Sorry about this. Well, we'll see what happens. Okay. Anyway, so as he approaches Jerusalem and he gets to Jerusalem, Mark is trying to write, as he writes his gospel. And now he's to the heart of the matter. The last several chapters that we've read and the ones through the end of it are going to deal with the heart of the gospel, which is what he's trying to emphasize to those readers. And as he does this, now he's going to talk about the death, burial, resurrection, and everything related to it, and everything. The last couple of weeks, he's already come in from Jerusalem, and that's what I was trying to show you here, some pictures from Jerusalem. This here is from the Mount of Olives, looking to the west, where the magic pointer goes. What is it called? The Dome of the Rock, which is a model from Lot's. Right here, this is the temple right here. This is called the Mount of Olives here, looking down. Kindred Valley, I believe, is this valley right here. It comes back up, and here's your wall on the eastern side. Here is where the Temple Mount is, where the actual temple was. And then over here is the farther south, southern portion to go around. This here would be the city of David. We'll look at some of that here in a minute or whatever. And most of the city that we're going to deal with today is going to be all along this edge right here, along the edge of the Kindred Valley. And what's the valley to the south? What's the valley to the south? Do you remember? I have a map in front of me. This one right here in the middle is where they burn all the trash. That's Enid right here. Right here, where they burn the trash. All right, so anyway, basically this is looking down. Here's a little bit closer view to show you what you see right here. This is on the side of the Mount Olives. This is a cemetery. These are high-valued locations because they all face the Temple Mount. So a good Jew, the closer he can get right up here, you'll notice actually coming up this mount, they actually have some over here. The closer you can get to the temple, first way, the more money you have, and the closer and the quicker you're going to get a resurrection or whatever it is they're looking for. So you will find the entire, when you see it from the other side, is covered with these graves here. This here is coming down the Mount of Olives. This is the way that the triumphant entry would have come down from the Mount of Olives. You'll remember, imagine my map, to the east, coming up from the Dead Sea and up through there, you come to Bethany. Bethany is on the east side of the Mount of Olives. As you go up the Mount of Olives and you come down on the west side, that's where this is, coming down into Jerusalem. Okay, Mount of Olives is higher than Jerusalem. You can actually look down on it. And we'll point out a few of those things as we do. So his triumphant entry comes down through here. There's Jerusalem in the distance as they start coming down the mountain. This here is olive trees. It's an olive grove that's about halfway down that we stopped at. They had a place there. And some views and stuff. And of course, there's all, look at all those graves, cemetery. all down the side of that valley, looking toward the south. Okay. This is from that vantage point where the olives are. There's a grove or whatever. It's about halfway down, and it's a place that they say, which we don't know that, but that a lot of times they've spent, and that Jesus would have been teaching possibly from somewhere along the mountains there sometime. And at the point that he looked down and said, "Oh Jerusalem, how I would have given myself and, tucked you under my wing like a mother hen would," kind of thing. It's not close, by the way. I'm sure you figured that out. And anyway, this would be the view that he would be looking at as he was pronouncing those statements and making those things, whatever. As you look here, here's two of your gates. There's a gate here, and here's a gate here. This right here, barely see it. This is the gate, beautiful. This is the southern end of, over this way would be where the actual temple would have been. This is the part that was the palace that was built out in this area here, and built with basically retaining walls, because they filled it with rubble from previous excavations, filled it in and filled it out and built it out, so it was almost built out on a cliff so that Herod could make his palace and his thing bigger and better, the temple bigger and better than one that's ever been there. Here's another view looking at it here to there. Continue on down the valley with Jerusalem in the distance. There's the gate, beautiful right there. It is totally sealed and closed up so that nobody can come in there, mostly security reasons. You've got to come in from the other side. This here, this picture is looking back. There's the Mount of Olives right here. This is up the top right here. This is on the southern edge of the temple. Go around here, you'll find the main temple here, but this is the temple wall and everything. When you look back up here along the southern edge, this is where Jesus would have come around this way to come up there. And this is what he would have been looking at. Well, not those buildings, but that area as he would come back each day from the temple. Remember, he went in town to the temple days for a week there, in back and forth. That's where all the lessons Mark talked about, some of them, and the different teachings that he had done. Talking about his impending death, talking about marriage and death, resurrection, and all the different things that he dealt with there, different family issues. Money was a big one. He talked about the cleansing the temple. Remember, he went in and cleansed it, took it out because they were selling. Well, what they were doing is they were selling stuff because the coins had Caesar's face on them. So basically, they were selling offerings for them to go make an offering, and their money changers were changing Caesar's money into temple coins, which had no face, because a face represents something to worship. So they would change it into temple coins that they could take in and contribute. Of course, like money changers, you get, 20% or whatever it is on the dollar or whatever it may be. And that's what they were doing. So they were a den of thieves. And I'll show you in a minute kind of the area where they would have been setting up. This here is on the side of Mount of Olives. This is a tomb. All of these are caskets. About this big. After the body decays and rots, they would gather it all up and put them into a box like this, and then they would lay on top of it the fresh bodies. As they would decay, they would do that. They showed us this. There's a couple up at the top of the mountain, but there's several all along this mountain. And what's important about that is they didn't have hotels. So where do you think they stayed when the mass pilgrimage came to Jerusalem? This is where they stayed. As a matter of fact, they would have like a big inner-green area, and then off in these little coves or side caverns or whatever is where they would put the bodies and stuff, and they would stay there in the caves. Remember we talked way back when we was talking about Jesus' birth, he was really born in a cave, because that's what stables were. They didn't build things out of wood, they used a big cave. That's where they would protect him, or whatever. It's the same thing here.
I thought they couldn't be in the same room, same area with a dead body.
Yes, but that's why they have those areas in the back that you're not supposed to get into or whatever. But the big room in the middle is where they would go. And they would use it plus, however, one of them was a Pharisee. So they didn't always follow rules. So this is looking back, once again, at Jerusalem, as they would have been back and forth each day, going up and down there. And the Bible says they went to Bethany at least some of the time, home of Mary and Martha. I think it's in John that talks about that. But part of the time, you wouldn't have gone that far. They would just retreat to the Mount of Olives for the night. And then he'd be back in the next morning. As a matter of fact, the night we just read about, they went as far as the Garden of Gethsemane. And they stopped there. All right. Moving on. All right. This here is they have a scale model there that Israel's put together of the temple in Old Jerusalem. So I've used it instead of Google in order to give you an idea of what it was, because they had taken the architecturals and all the historical stuff and put it together, built this model. Where you're standing is like up high right here. This here would be the eastern wall right here, and where you would go in, and here's where the temple would be. This is Solomon's colonnade porch, Solomon's porch. All this around here would be the place of the for the Gentiles. All right. So where was Jesus teaching last week? Or the Gentiles. This is where you find Jesus, right in here and all around here. As a matter of fact, if you go out here, I'll show you in just a second. That's where the main entrances that come into the temple, into this court, come in from the south. There it is. Well, first of all, just for your information, I always thought Jerusalem was the city of David. It is not. This ridge is the city of David. Then the temple was built here. There is a valley right here. This is the one comes down through into this right here. This is the valley we just talked about. Kindred Valley. It comes around over here. Okay, very deep ravine. And then over here would be the Mount of Olives. Anyway, my point is, what you're about to see right now, I'm going to show you this up close. This is the entranceway where they would have been buying and selling everything right here as they would go through these doors. So they would basically be going through a great bazaar kind of thing as they bought and sold and did everything so that they could come through these doors in order to come into the temple with the offering they needed and with the money they needed. And this is all taking place here. So this is where Jesus overthrew everything right here. What you're going to find later on, just for reference, is a lot of things took place right in here, according to best guess. All right. First of all, right in here, you're going to find the upper room. They supposedly is located in here. And over in here is where we're going to find the high priest's house, the temporary high priest. All right, here's the temple up close. This is where they had it. This is the ceremonial bath, where they would wash and purify before they went to the temple. And this is where they would sell it, before they went in through this area here. This is a view straight, like if you were on top of Mount of Olives, looking down on it. It's got a platform level up there, so you can look down and see the city and where it would be. Okay? We'll see more of that over the next couple days. All right. That brings us to today. All right. So today, the first thing we find out in Mark chapter 14, when we're here, is that Jesus is where? What town? Mary and Martha lived there. Lazarus was raised from the dead. Bethany. Now that's not Bethany across the Jordan, that's the Bethany next to Jerusalem. And it is where we're standing right behind us. You know, on the eastern, near the top, but on the eastern side of Mount of Olives. And while they're there, an interesting thing takes place. What happens? You just read it. A woman takes a jar of alabaster, breaks it open, and what does she do? She pours it on Jesus' head. She anoints his head. The purpose was, as Jesus pointed out, to anoint him for burial. It's also, what do you do with a king? You anoint one who's about to become king. There was a lot of symbolism built into this. So this anointing was very significant and very important, because not only did it anoint him for his burial, it anointed him for his king, his priesthood, all the things that are about to begin today, that day. Okay? So this anointing takes place, actually it was 2 days before that, but about to take place. And as they're doing this, we find that one in the crowd, probably a guy named Judas, was not real happy. Now, what was Judas' job with the 12? Does anybody remember? The money keeper. Somebody breaks a $50,000 bottle of perfume. He had a heart attack. And he'd think what we could do if we gave it to the poor. Well, his character indicates that he probably got his cut too, but do what? Says he was a thief. Yeah, so he got his cut too. So now we got a $50,000 bottle of perfume that's being busted open, and he's not getting his cut, and they could do a whole lot with it. So he's not happy. Doesn't say it was him that said that, but the indications from all the things you put together, he was at least a part of the group that was disgruntled. The other part was probably some Pharisaical people and some people that were very strong Jewish conservatives, I guess you might say, but Pharisaical type people that were more concerned about what you did than the whole thing that was going on. So we find that this takes place, and we find that right behind that taking place, and the indignation and the indignity that is seen, we find that it says, Judas Iscariot sought out the chief priests and Pharisees, chief priests and teachers of the law, in order that he might betray him. And they promised him money. We learn later it was 30 pieces of silver. But, so it's right on the heels of that we find that he decides, time to do it. At the same time, this verse started off, before they started talking about them in Bethany, it talked about the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for a way to kill him. So as this is approaching that last moment, they're looking for a way to kill him, but they don't want to do it with a feast coming up, because what happens? What's the people going to do? People are going to have a riot. What happens when they have a riot? Rome comes down and squashes things. You know what happens when Rome gets involved? The Sadducees, who had all the money, suddenly weren't making money. You know, they come in there and crush all this money making was going on during this annual event at the temple. It would be bad for sales and their longevity, because Rome was okay with just about anybody doing just about anything as long as they minded their place and kept things under control. That's why we have a replacement high priest in place that we'll talk about probably next week. So here we go. We look at this and we see so this takes place, and then Jesus sends out 2 of his disciples, sends them out to go find a place for them to have the Passover meal. All right? So he goes out to have the Passover meal, and he sends 2 of them out and tells them to go to where? All right, they're in Bethany or up in Mount of Olives, somewhere over there, and he sends them out, tells them to go into the city. What city would that be? Not Bethany. Jerusalem. Go to Jerusalem, and you'll find somebody carrying a jar of water. Follow him. When you get to the house, tell the owner, hey, the master's coming. And he will show you a room. It says it was an upper room and a large room. Some will suppose that it was actually the place that would eventually be where the church would meet. The church would meet later after Acts 2:38. And we start meeting there. Some say that the room was actually the place where Mark's mother, where the church met, actually was the owner of the house. We'll say that, because there's indications that that's where the church met. Others will say those two upper rooms, those two rooms are two different places. Maybe, I don't know. You know, there's a lot of things crossing over, and it's really a small world when you really think about it in a lot of ways. Here Mark is, he's writing about it. So this is looking down on the Mount Olives, looking toward, there's the temple right here, the corner of the temple. As you go around here, here's the city of David. As you go around here, over in here would be where most of the city was at that time. And you would find the upper room, the one that they traditionally consider the upper room today. It goes here, and we've already shown you this, but it would be located right, it would come around the temple right around here. You can't hardly cross this. It takes too long to go down the valley there and then back up. Very difficult. They have a place where it kind of, a ridge kind of comes around like this. And you can come around right in here. All right. And you shop. Then you come to a place they call the room of the Last Supper. Don't know if it's the case. I'm going to show it to you anyway, but it's one that's historically considered that. It's been argued since then it was a different upper room. Like there were two different upper rooms. They built a church there to remember whatever. It's the reason it's there. This would be where it is. And this here, of course, was destroyed. Keep this in mind. It's got to remind us every single time where you're walking is where they went. But none of these buildings were there because the Romans destroyed everything in AD 70. Everything to rubble. But they have built a church back in the place where this, and referred to it as the place where the upper room was. Okay? This here is looking back as you were leaving the upper room and coming back along the city, back toward the Mount of Olives. This is the head of the Kindred Valley. There's the Temple Mount here. There's the Mount of Olives. And right as you come around from the south, back up to the north and around, because you couldn't go through it. This is it right here. And this is right here looking straight down the Kindred Valley toward the south. There's another view of that. All right, that brings us to this. So they have the, they go into the upper room, and in there they have what is referred to as the Last Supper. When we're there, we find that, I hadn't talked in a while. So when evening came, Jesus arrived with the 12. And while he was reclining there, he said, "One of you will betray me." And then he defines which one it is. It is one of the 12 who will dip the bread into the bowl with him. And I say that because they say one of the 12. Because all indications, and I always think, you see, Da Vinci's picture with all the people sitting there and a nice straight table, the head of the table kind of thing. Well, first of all, that is not in character with what they would have had. Most of you have already been told that before. They would actually have a low table about like this. They would sit on the floor and recline on their left side and eat with their right hand, basically. And one would lay here, the next would lay there, kind of like dominoes and stacked all the way around. But in addition to that, it wasn't just the 12. It was his disciples. So there was a large upper room to have a large gathering for the Passover meal. Those that followed Jesus around all over the place. Mary, Martha, Lazarus, we don't know who all, but a large group of people, not just the 12. But the 12 were there, and Jesus says it will be one of these 12 that dips into the bread into the bowl at the same time. So he defines who it would be. And as we know from John, nobody could figure it out. And as I've stated before, nobody really could tell, and the reason they couldn't tell is because Jesus loved him just as much as he loved John. And we see that when we see him washing the feet. I've always said a long time ago, you probably heard me say it, I'll say it one more time, that when you go to wash people's feet, and you know one's about to betray you, everybody in the room would know that if it was me. I'd be washing his feet, and they'd be going, "What did he do?" Because
Where you got the salt and love.
Yeah, exactly. Give me some hummus. But yes, but the point is, they still, in all of this, and they didn't understand that it was even Judas until actually it happened. So here they are, they have this, and then he turns around and he institutes, as they take this Passover feast, and he institutes the memorial feast. He tells us to remember him until he returns. To do this continually, to remember this, his death, burial, and resurrection. He says, take this bread, because it is my body. Remember his body. It was broken, it was about to be crucified, and whatever, of which they still had no clue that it was. Take this cup, which represents his blood of the covenant that was shed for many. Not for one, not for a few, but for many. It was blood of the covenant. They were there, they understood about blood, they understood about covenants, they understood about all this. It was kind of strange that he was talking about it and he kept putting himself in that place. But as he did in this and was telling them these things, he also told on and tell them, I'm not going to drink this again till I drink it with you again in the kingdom. He was looking forward to a few days down the road, 50 days, when the kingdom would be established and he would be able to drink it with him. We do that every week. We meet with the king and we drink and with him as he promised that he would. And so as he looks forward to that day, he tells us that at that particular feast. And then it says, when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. All right? And for those of you, on Sunday night, we started dismissing with a song. That's the reason. Because when they were done, they dismissed with a song, not a prayer. We did that. Just to throw things around. Anyway. So then it says they went out to the Mount of Olives. When they go to the Mount of Olives, they go to a place called the Garden of Gethsemane. That's what this is. If you're looking right here, you can see this is right in that low spot where you can go around from one mountain to the other, to the Temple Mount, without being at the top or down into the Kidron Valley. Kidron Valley is down right through here. Here's the Temple Wall right here. And basically, you come around and then you come up like this. So here they basically just gone around. It's a very easy walk. Matter of fact, while most people were still over here, I wanted to get a picture back over here, so I took off and ran over there. It took me about 5 minutes to run around here to the base of where it starts to go back up toward the temple on this side of Kidron Valley. So I went around the Kidron Valley. This is the garden. They have olive trees in this garden that have genetic history that date back to the time of Christ, quote unquote. I don't know about that, but it is, they're old. You're looking straight across the Kidron Valley. The gate's beautiful. Right there is where the temple would be. This is right there from the garden itself. This is part of the garden. Some of the trees that are in there, they're olive trees for the most part. As you can see, when somebody was talking about how beautiful the place is, still dirt, still gravel, still mud. Not a real green place, but it's good for these type of trees. So into the garden they would go. And they have built this big church right here to remember that event, and people go there all the time. We went there, and it's an opportunity to go in and a place quiet and pray. So we have an opportunity to go in there and pray and remember the events that took place at this particular time. The events that took place, remember what happened there? They go over to the garden. It's evening, late. Everybody's tired, had a long day. They keep running back and forth across this mountain, back and forth for the last week. Spending all day in the temple teaching and talking and things, and then they go back and they spend time on the Mount of Olives telling with his disciples, telling them things. That's where he told them, look, Jerusalem, what I would have done for you. And he also, that's where he tells them about the impending destruction of Jerusalem. You might have talked about that last week. How he tells them that there's a day coming that you better be running, better be hiding, because that city that you see across the way there will be totally destroyed. And he talks about that event, whatever. So here we go. Had all this busy time. They've had the Passover meal. They have come back around the edge of the town there around the temple, across the Kidron Valley to this garden, which is a place Jesus liked to go to pray. It's a quiet place. And he would go there, and he told the disciples to wait here. He took 3 people with him. Who did he take with him? Peter, James, and John. 3 closest. And he takes the 3 of them and says, come with me. And he goes a little bit farther into the garden, it says, and when he goes there, he tells them to wait and watch. That's all he asked. Wait here and watch. And he went on a little bit further, and we finally gets down, and he prays. And as he prays to God, he says this. First of all, before all that, jump ahead, sorry about that. He tells them that you're all going to fall away during at the last meal. He's telling them, you're all going to fall away, but after I've risen, go to Galilee. Which incidentally, that's where they're going to all end up, back in Galilee. Peter says, hey, wait a minute. You're not dying. Because why? And I'm not going to betray you because I'll stand up for you no matter what. And Jesus tells him what? Yes, you will. As a matter of fact, you'll deny me 3 times before the cock crows or the rooster crows twice. Make it clear. And he tells the rest of them, they're all going to defy him, they're all going to flee, and they're all going to run away. And they all stayed out. It says, even if we have to die, we'll never disown you. See, we don't always talk about that. Peter said that first, but all of them, basically, Mark goes on to say they all made the same proclamation that they would defend him even to the point of death. All right? So they make this proclamation, and then we see that they go into the garden. He's over there praying, and as he's praying, he's saying, praying, and it says, Abba, Father. Abba means Father. What kind of Father? Close, relationship Father, not as in, yes, sir, Father. You know what I mean? It's more, and I've heard some people use it, daddy. And sometimes I think that kind of downplays it. But basically, it's a close, warm, loving dad, please. I think of dad there. If at all possible, let this pass from me. And he goes on to tell them that his soul was overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. So he's about, it's like heartbreak almost. And he goes to stay there. And he says, Father, everything is possible with you. Take this cup from me, because he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to go through the physical death. He didn't want to go through, more important, the spiritual death. What would take place in the grave. It was something he really didn't want to. Nobody wants to. And he said, if it's all possible, and you can do anything, let it pass. The fact of the matter is, what that tells us is that's the only way. That was the only way. It's that God had to die for us. All right? So he goes on, and he says, but it's not my choice. It's whatever you want. I'll do whatever you say. And as while he prayed, he was turning it over to God. The disciples did what? Left. And we did that. Did anybody mention all-night prayer vision? How many fell asleep? A lot. It's hard. It's easy to do. Simon, watch and pray so that you will not be tempted. He gets on to Simon because Simon's already said, I'll never betray you. And he says, yes, you will. And then Simon's over there sleeping. Jesus is looking for strength from God, and Simon's sleeping through it all. Which one fails? Simon. They all do, yeah. But in comparison to God, Jesus and him, Jesus is talking to the Father and goes through. Peter's look. All right. So they slept because their eyes were heavy, and they really didn't know what to say about it. And Jesus says, your spirit is willing, but the body is weak. So the main thing that I want us to get here is this. Mark is writing, he's trying to emphasize. He spent what we just read about this chapter. He's trying to tell them the Romans didn't come kill Jesus. Jesus said it was going to happen. He told them it was going to happen. He showed them it was going to happen. He prepared for it to happen. He did all these things because he knew exactly what it was, because it didn't come from Rome. It came from God. So all the people out there, the naysayers, say, yeah, well, the Romans just caught him and turn him into a martyr or whatever. He said, no, no, no. Jesus knew what was happening. He prophesied. He told them exactly how many days, how he's going to be in the grave, and what was going to happen here, and the events. And he lays all these events out as Peter would have seen them. And he lays them out to say, this Jesus is more than just some martyr somewhere. That's what I think he's trying to get across. All right, any last comments?
Scott,
Yeah.
as I see on Judas here, most of us think all along Judas is planning to betray Jesus. But I think Judas did not plan to betray Jesus until the oil was wasted in his mind. And Jesus corrected him publicly, and out of revenge and out of anger, he says, I'll get back to you. I will go.
That's a very real possibility.
And I think that he did that on the spur of the moment.
Could be. Could be.
That's what I read.
Well, it looks to me like all along he was kind of trying to figure out his angle. You know, how he can get more out of it or whatever. It seemed to be the kind of attitude that he had.
Then he says, is it I?
Is it I? What do you mean, is it I? You know who it is. All right. Thank you. We'll take up the next chapter, last part of that chapter 14 next week.